Good afternoon. My name is Julie Goodman, and I'm fairly new into the role of Head of Patient and Family Experience at Milton Keynes Hospital. I'm just wanted to say we're really excited and honoured to be part of the final in this category today. I'm really pleased to be here. Just next slide, please. So just wanted to talk about where it began, and there should be on here a slide to get us into YouTube to play a song for a few seconds. Okay.
Love letters stream from your heart. Keep us so near while apart. I'm not alone in the night when I can have all the love you write. I memorize every.
Thank you. Next slide, please. I just wanted to think about first, and we wanted to think about first for us all to think about how we would have felt if we'd have been a patient in the hospital at this time, or a loved one and had a loved one in hospital during the pandemic as well. So it's the end of March, the beginning of April 2020. Lockdown happened almost overnight, and we were facing a very different world to the one we already knew. People were asked to stay at home. Visiting your loved one in hospital was no longer allowed. Our jobs and lives changed almost beyond recognition. We're scared, worried, we're concerned and anxious. Just imagine, for most of us in the NHS, we will experience all of these emotions, but we were still coming to work and our lives were fairly normal in that way, and we were going home to our loved ones. But for our patients and their families, this was possibly the worst situation. I took myself back to when my own mother was ill, and I lost her 3 years ago, and I couldn't imagine leaving her in hospital and not being able to see her or probably not speak to her either. So the loved ones in our hospital, our patients, were not able to see their friends and their family, and friends and family were at home, not being able to visit the people that they cared about the most. As a patient experience department, we tried to imagine how this would feel for our patients and their friends and families. We couldn't imagine, as I've said. We just knew if we were in their shoes, we would desperately be seeking any form of contact, even the tiniest amount of contact. What we thought to ourselves, what could we do? We couldn't wait for decisions to be made up high. We needed to act and act quickly. Some of our patients were very poorly, and some of them went on to die without seeing their family and friends face to face again. Next slide, please. Families were left worried and anxious, and we needed to find ways that they could connect with their loved ones, especially for those patients who could not use or did not have a mobile phone or tablet. And we have many of those patients in our hospital, many patients with perhaps a dementia diagnosis who didn't know or couldn't use a mobile phone. And not all of us do use mobile phones. Some of our patients couldn't see or hear well enough to use a phone or any other type of technology. Next slide, please. So we put our heads together and thought, what could we do? What service could we provide that would benefit all of those people we've talked about, our patients, their friends and their families? So what we did is we went back to our roots. We thought about what did we do years ago? What did we do in the past? What did we all like receiving years ago? And we realised it was letters. We all loved receiving a letter from a pen friend or a relative or a family member. And we loved getting them through the post and couldn't wait to open them. So this made us think, and what we did straight away was set up a dedicated email. This was done within a couple of hours, dedicated email address called Letters to Loved Ones. What we did is we let the families know and friends know through social media. Our communications team were fabulous. They helped us to publicise this over social media and on Facebook, Twitter, on our website, that families and friends could send letters to their loved ones through our dedicated email address. Next slide, please. So we were inundated overnight. Letters and photographs soon came in, and each and every letter and photograph touched our hearts and souls. And those memories of those letters and what was in them still stays with us to this day, on the some of them especially. So what we did is we wanted to ensure infection control was followed, so we laminated each letter and photograph. The letters were coming in from sons, daughters, wives, husbands, friends, cousins, far and wide across the country and across other countries in the world. We laminated them and delivered them to the outside of the ward area where our nurses would take them and deliver them to the patients. Nurses read letters where patients weren't able to. Some of the letters were read to our patients who were so sadly at the end of their life. The staff dealing with the letters and reading them felt truly privileged and honoured to be let into the private lives and words of love from family and friends. Over 2,000 letters have been delivered to date. For those at the end of their life, we also held a Hold My Hand initiative, which ensured that staff were sitting with patients at the end of their life. And they used to focus on sharing the lovely letters and photos that that person had received. For the families, it was nice to know that their letters were being read and that somebody was with their loved one at the end of their life. Next slide, please. We were so privileged to get to, as I say, to get to read these letters, and in doing so we found out that some of our patients had birthdays during this time because birthday cards would come streaming in for them. So we made sure that we joined this celebration and made it a better day for them. So we checked with the ward sister of the ward that the patient was in, asked if they could have cake, and if they could, we made sure that the patient experience team delivered a cake, or cakes, as in this gentleman's case, and we delivered a birthday card as well to try and brighten up their day. This would have been a day that they'd have normally spent with their friends and family and their loved ones. So this particular gentleman became quite famous, and I'll talk about that in a little while. But they were so pleased to have someone think about them on their birthday where they couldn't see their loved ones. The feedback we got from this service was fabulous. One lady saying, "I thank you wholeheartedly for your part in relieving the suffering and loneliness that can work against healing and contributing to the well-being of all those whose need is great." Next slide, please. But what could we do about those patients who didn't have any family? Because we do have the occasional patient doesn't have any family or didn't have any friends that were able to write into them. So our deputy chief nurse spoke with her local primary school, and children got together and wrote letters addressed to a dear friend. And we made sure that these were delivered to those patients who didn't have any contact otherwise from the outside world. At Christmas time, we realised again that people would not be seeing their loved ones and would not be receiving the Christmas cards they once would. So we made sure as a team, we sent every single patient a laminated Christmas card. And patients really, really welcomed that little nice touch at Christmas to celebrate. Next slide, please. Yes, so talking about the gentleman who's in the previous slide and our little claim to fame, Ross Kemp from ITV was given access to our hospital. Some of you may have seen that on ITV, and he was reporting on the devastating effects of COVID. Letters to loved ones featured on that show, and the gentleman in the previous slide who we gave the cakes to actually met with Ross to receive his letter. It was a real heartwarming connection with him and Ross. And this gentleman, unfortunately, went on to pass away not long after that. And the family now treasure that recording, because obviously that was the last time they probably saw him and heard him talk before he was passed away. And again, so as members of staff, we felt so privileged to share those moments and share with the family those precious moments. Next slide, please. Another initiative we put into action really quickly by the 1st of April was our relatives line. We wanted to do more. We realised that the wards were receiving so many calls from families to request updates on their loved ones, and many times, due to the busyness of the ward, the telephones just couldn't be answered. Families were frustrated, anxious and angry, and staff were racked with guilt that they just couldn't get round and work quickly enough to do everything they needed to do. So we've worked fast and hard as a team, and we installed a dedicated line for families to get a general update on their loved one. We based the telephone line in the POWERS office, and POWERS officers and nurses worked together to make sure the line was manned. The line was advertised again through our wonderful communications team on the social media and on the Trust website through posters. And just in case people hadn't got the message that we weren't allowed to have visitors, we made sure posters were on the outside doors informing people that they could call and find out about their loved one. As I said, it was up and running by the 1st of April and was provided 7 days a week, including bank holidays 10 till 6, until the demand calmed down, and that was in around August time, end of August, when we finally went to Monday to Friday before it was stopped then at the end of August. As the second COVID wave came, we resurrected that really quickly again. We're able to offer exactly the same service through to the end of February. So through that whole time we were offering this, we had hundreds of calls. What was really nice was the relationships that the families had with the POWERS officers and the nurses manning the lines. We got to know them very well, we got to know their voices, we got to know all about their loved one and their lives, and it was truly an honour to be part of that. And my team worked fantastically throughout this time to provide this service. So we did the relatives line, was a fantastic bit of collaboration work, which we've now been able to integrate into having a clinical person within the patient experience team. We also did a bag drop off for relatives to drop off their bags for the loved ones to receive their personal items, and another piece of truly sort of collaborative work between the volunteers and our security team. And also for those patients that passed away and the families need to come and collect their belongings. We worked together with the bereavement team to make sure that was done in the most nicest way possible. And last but not least, other technology we used in the hospital was the NIAP and Zoom calls to enable our patients to connect across the world. And that was especially lovely with those patients that were at the end of their life and were able to say goodbye to their families. Thank you for listening, and a massive thank you to my team who made all of what I've talked about today happen. Thank you very, very much.